Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of the Team Deakins Podcast, a collection of informal conversations between Roger and James Deakins and a guest. We never know where the conversation will take us, so listen in and see where it goes. This episode is sponsored by Aperture, a premier manufacturer of LED lighting with the industry's greatest variety of fixtures for your complete lighting needs. Aperture recently announced the new Storm family of lights. With LED white light quality that matches natural daylight and classic tungsten bulbs, plus extreme low-end dimming while maintaining color quality. Discover more about the new Storm lights and the complete Aperture lighting ecosystem at aperture.com. Today we're speaking with a production designer. Among her credits are SALTBURN, CONCLAVE, and Hard Truths. We're pleased to welcome Suzie Davies. Suzie, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. I listen to this a lot. So when this cropped up, I was, very excited.
Oh, great. We'd like to start with our normal question, which is, how did you get to where you are today? Were you, as a kid, designing things, or did you go down another path and then find it? Where did you grow up? What's your story?
Okay. So I come from a pretty traditional family. No one works in this industry. My dad was an engineer. My mum was a music teacher. I have a brother who was in the army, another one that was a farmer. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I sort of liked horses, when I was younger, and ponies. And I thought I might be a farmer as well. So I wasn't very good at school. I was a bit naughty and didn't know what I wanted to do. So didn't get very good qualifications, hardly any, and had a few goes at that. So I did that years traveling when I left school in like the lower sixth, went to Australia, worked on a big sheep ranch out there when I was 18, and just thought, this will be amazing. I want to do this, and that during that trip, I got offered a dog, a car, a house, and just thought, okay, I'm going to get residency and move to Australia. And this is when you're 18. So I suddenly thought I'd found the world, but obviously it was a tiny little bit of the world. So it became apparent that I needed to go home to get some more. You had to get a point system to get your residency in Australia back then. So I came home to try and get more qualifications to allow me to go back to work on a sheep station in the middle of New South Wales. So I came back, went to agricultural college in Devon.
Wow, which one?
Seal Hayne. Do you know Seal Hayne?
Oh, Seal Hayne. Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah. And loved it, absolutely loved it. But at any university or college you'd love, I was it was just great fun and enjoyed my time there. But during that time realised, I didn't want to go back to Australia because suddenly music and art and films were all sort of within reach. Still had no thought of coming into the industry. But when I graduated from agriculture college and was looking for a grown-up job, I sort of knew my heart wasn't really in agriculture as much as anything. I wanted to do something different from the rest of my family for some reason. And whilst I was living at home, going for interviews for agricultural marketing or something, didn't quite know what, I started to work for a sculptor and model maker in the village who would often take on school leavers just to earn some cash during the summer, sweeping floors and making cups of tea. And he was this amazing guy called Dick Budden, who was an amazing sculptor and model maker. He does big, massive sculptures out of polystyrene. And I would sweep his floor, make some cups of tea, and we'd go to pre-light on commercials, install a 50-foot dragon. And it was literally like someone opening a door to a world I knew nothing about, absolutely nothing.
Oh.
So
where was his studio?
He's got a studio. This is where my parents lived in Waltham St Lawrence, which is a little town in Berkshire, so near Bray, basically. And and I worked for him, and then I started working for lots of other model makers. And just because I just started to really enjoy what we were doing, and he, bless him, he treated me like an apprentice and explained, construction drawings and how to create 50-foot dragons out of polystyrene. and how to do the paint finishes and things like that. So designers would come to us, and I started working for lots of other model makers. There was a little crew of us going around, and it was one of the best experiences to observe how films are made and how things are made. And I just started getting really intrigued. It just suddenly felt like this is where I was supposed to be. And so, I started working on all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and being able to watch we'd go to Pinewood and Shepperton, and it was such a great opportunity to see everyone working, because as a model maker, there's a little moment when you go in, do your thing, and then everyone takes over. So I sort of reveled in that, and then just started, assistant art directing for some of the designers that would come and ask for these weird and wonderful things. And then I started to think, why are we doing these weird and wonderful things? And I just was a bit intrigued by the storytelling that goes behind it, and then merging the two together. So it just, every step I made during the process, I just felt more and more comfortable that I was supposed to be there, that this was my job, sort of thing. This is what I was going to do.
So since you came from the model making part of it, you understood construction really well, right? And so do some people come into it from this design point and want to design everything, but you kind of came in, and when you wanted to design something, you knew how to build it.
Yeah, I think, exactly that. I think I was able to build on a very good spatial awareness, 3-dimensional awareness. So coming at it from a completely different angle. And that's the beauty of our industry, that everyone brings something, and it's the mix of all of us that create the ultimate end product. So it's great to work with people who've come from film school and can draw amazingly, or have an architectural background or a construction background, or have never worked in it before, or have come from another industry. And I love that mix now, and I sort of embrace that. I try to embrace that in the art departments that I work in now, to have a good mix of people who've gone to film school and people that haven't, because I think it's the joy sometimes that creates those little elements of excitement when you make something. Yeah.
Do you find there's more people that have been to film school now that are entering the industry?
I think it's 50-50 still. I think it's
still the same.
Yeah, I think so. I always felt I should have gone, and maybe had I known that I wanted to do it, I probably would have gone, but I just didn't know back then that this is what I wanted to do. And my route, because I was a standby art director for ages as well, I thought that would be I thought I'd be a lifer doing that. And I loved it, because I love working with that team on camera. And again, that's another, I think I try and encourage everyone in the departments that work with me, that everyone should do a bit of standby, just to understand what the important bits are, because you can design wonderful things, but there's no point if you're not going to see it, or it's not going to be used in those ways. So, and I love that, what you can make in, quick, we need an animatronic cat. Well, how do we make it, sort of thing. I love all of that.
And what made you decide to take that step up to be a designer and not an art director?
Yeah, I guess I had a really great opportunity to work with some brilliant designers, Malcolm Thornton in particular, and Robert Harris, who had both come through the BBC sort of thing. And I worked on a lot of period dramas, TV dramas. And I guess I just started being very curious again about why were we making this? Because as a standby, you'd come in even later, and I sort of wanted to know the storytelling process a little bit more. And I just something I just took a risk, basically, and then just was really fortuitous and got some good breaks along the way, and made the opportunities work for me, sort of thing. It's that whole thing, isn't it, that you work with, I worked with runners who are now running big production companies.
Yeah, really. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So it's been fun for those, and that's what when I speak to students or whatever, is just to, that's how it works. And it's brilliant. And it's lovely now to work with some of those people when we were, back in the day doing a night shoot in the middle of Windsor or something, and making cups of tea for everybody. And now, here we are sort of, doing nice work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a much more fluid system now, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you want to put it that way. I mean, it used to be, you had to have family that had been in the industry, and then you'd work your way up, and when you were like 60 you may get
Yeah.
to draw something or handle a camera,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fluid now, which is I think fantastic. It's great. I see I'll look at what you started out doing. You did a lot of television. You did 13 episodes of a series called Kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
Lip Service, Eternal Law. How did that start out, and why television? I mean, was that just a opportunity that happened?
Exactly, that was an opportunity. I mean, I would have obviously, I was a massive, when I started to think I wanted to design, I went online and was looking at all these making of movies. And I can remember watching Nathan Crowley and Chris Nolan building Batman in his garage, and thinking that's what I want to do. But I just felt it was very difficult to even get my foot in the door with films, because it seemed very different back then, the television world and film world.
Yeah.
And I'd worked on as a standby actor, I'd worked with a producer called Georgina Lowe, who is actually Mike's producer, and she'd done this program. I did a series called Tipping the Velvet way back when. And then she was prepping this thing called Kingdom. Just as the time that I was making the break, I'd sent CVs to any producer, anybody I'd ever worked with, to say, do you remember me? I'm thinking of designing, if anything comes up, sort of thing. And it was by chance that Georgina was looking for a designer, and she was in Norfolk with a director, and they'd met a designer, and they were coming back on the train as my email dropped into her email account. And they decided, she said to me, if you can meet us at the train at King's Cross, we'll meet you now. We've just come back. We just met a designer. We're not sure. And I just literally hopped on the train, got to King's Cross, met them. And it was just at the beginning of digital camera making. There's a big jump to everyone using digital. And I'd used it a lot I think I'd done a low budget dance film with DV8, and we'd used digital in it. So I suddenly thought, because I'd used it, I think everyone thought I must know what I'm talking about.
And it was all so mysterious at that time.
Exactly. So, and as far as I was aware, I do the same job. If it's film, video, digital,
Yeah, really.
I do the same thing. So anyway, I met George and the director, and we got on, and they took a risk, and that was Kingdom. And so I did 3 seasons of Kingdom in Norfolk, which was my sort of big break really into proper designing. It was with and I can just remember sort of filling this space and just thinking, God, this feels brilliant. This is where I should be, what I should be doing. And it was a fantastic experience. It was, gentle Sunday afternoon TV. But from my point of view, it's creating these little vignettes of stories every week on quite a tight budget, but with a great team. And, we're all quite young. We lived in Norfolk for the summer. What could be better?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it was really lovely. And it was the same team every year, and we did 3 seasons of it. And that put me in good stead, basically.
Sorry, I was going to ask, was that all location shooting, and how did you go about? What was the process? I mean, was it fast and furious? And how did you find locations and stuff?
It was fast and furious, and it was absolute. I was learning every day. Like I said, I just felt like I was a sponge taking in all this information. I didn't really know how to recce. When I did the short films I'd done and low budget stuff I'd done, was we all sort of just messed up, just sort of like found our way. That we didn't do anything traditionally. And suddenly I was working with a bunch of professionals. So I had to sort of really join in and go, yes, well, we'll go and look at these locations. And I started realizing what I needed to do really on the job. And but it worked. I don't know how, but it sort of worked. So on the recce's, and I still use it now, I mark things out of 10. so that we have we can explain to the location managers why it's not working or why it is working, and that everyone, like producers and directors, sort of understand which direction we're going and why that is. So because the speed of trying to find things is quite quick, and we try and film on a 7 or above. We'll revisit. It's a bit like
right.
Yeah, like Kirsty and Phil on the telly.
Yeah.
But and then working to a budget as well. I was having to.
Yeah.
It was a bit bigger than I'd been used to. £2.50 was suddenly 250 grand or whatever. So that was all good.
Wow.
A really good learning curve across the whole thing.
But it's also an enormous challenge in TV. I did some when I started out, and it was an enormous challenge, I think, to everybody. Not only finding locations that work for the story, but they had to work for the schedule.
Yeah.
Going upstairs, downstairs. How do you get into a 7th floor apartment, and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
This must have been kind of quite a learning curve.
Absolutely, and that's as well. I think working in TV, because I've done a bit of live telly as well. Live telly is fast and furious. TV's fast and furious, and actually films. In some respects is a lot calmer. You do have a lot more time to get there, sort of thing. So I think it's to do a bit of everything is always really useful, because always learning, aren't you? So
yeah, I mean, it must be like somebody like Mike Leigh. He's much more specific. I know he's got the reputation of kind of working the script and figuring out what it is over a long time. But from what Dick's always said, by the time you get to shoot, there is something quite firm. But he must have very strong ideas visually about the kind of locations that are going to work for the story or not. Can you talk about that change between what you'd been doing in television and working on? Well, was Mr. Turner your first with Mike, was it?
I actually did. When we had the Olympics in 2012, I did a thing called the Cultural Olympiad, where there were 5 films made, and Mike made one of those 5 little short films. So I had like a working interview with him, took a risk on me then, and we did a little 10-minute movie with Eddie Marsan and Sam Spiro in Walthamstow, and managed to, we just sort of got on, which was great. So then when Mr. Turner came out, it was, that's an absolute pivot for my career, because he does work in such a different way. And you're thrown in, and you join in or you don't. I completely understand some people won't be able to work with him, or won't want to work his way, and won't bend to his way. But his way does work, and I've worked with him now 4 or 5 times, and it takes a while to get back into that rhythm. But I love it, because it's the most collaborative, creative, artistic journey that I go on, really. And it has influenced, I think, the way I work generally. But his discovery of the story, he really embraces all his HODs. And as a designer, I'm quite early in that process. So, for instance, even in Hard Truths, he told me that it was, the premise was about a family in northwest London. That was it, and then and so yeah, and so when he was rehearsing, Duncan Lang, the amazing location manager, and I thought, okay, it was a contemporary. We sort of vaguely knew our budget, and it was going to be somewhere in northwest London. So whilst he was rehearsing in that first couple of weeks, Duncan and I went and looked at every sort of class of house, from a flat, a detached terrace, a big posh house, in that span, just to get some images. And because Mike likes working on location, because it gives you idiosyncrasies of the real world, he tells real stories. So yeah, we looked at houses, we looked at schools, we found some pubs, we found some hospitals, just to get, we didn't know which way we were going, just thinking, okay, what does everybody need? Maybe a supermarket or whatever. And then And then he started giving me little hints, and then I met with the characters, and that's just it's one of my most favorite things. So I get to sit with the characters, and we talk about, sit with the actors, and we talk about their characters in the third person. So I'll sort of say, you need a new kitchen table. tell me the process you'd go to get a kitchen table. So when I was speaking to Marianne, it was be like I would, I change my table all the time. I get it from Homebase or Dunelm. I want something you can clean really easily. And then other people might say, God, I've had the same table for 20 years. I'm not going to change that. And that little bit of information informs the complete rest of the kitchen, really.
Wow,
and
yeah.
It's like I was really hoping for loads of detail in Marianne's character's house, but it was interesting that she didn't want anything because of her situation. She wanted it clean and no surfaces, nothing was left, and that really, I was like, well, it's going to look really drab, but actually it ends up with bags of character because it didn't have anything. I think we think we have to dress every corner of everything, and it's actually sometimes about restraint is also another form of character telling. Yeah. So
less is more.
Yeah. In some respects, it is. So that opportunity with Mike to build the worlds of the characters is fascinating because you don't get that indulgence on any other films. I don't get to sit down with the actors 3 or 4 times before they turn up. They turn up and I go, this is the house you're living in. That's the car. And this is, it's good on them for joining in, because when you see how sincere and authentic Mike's actors are in their environments, the difference, I really feel for the actors sometimes walking onto a soundstage and going, God, okay, this is where I live, get my head around this, let alone the lines and the dialogue and the story they've got to tell. So I try and be mindful of that on all the jobs I do now.
So on Hard Truths then, did you have to dress the sets and everything well in advance so everybody could come and study everything in detail?
Yeah, it's sort of built into the schedule that Mike gets 2 or 3 days at least to rehearse with the characters in their full costume to inhabit their world. So then when we come to filming 3 or 4 days later, they're completely embedded. And by then, any little idiosyncrasies that they find they want to add in the dressing have been fed back to us, and we've been able to do that. So we come up to the dressing and it's on point. It's, all there. And he's very pragmatic. He knows the amount of time we need to create things. So for instance, on Mr. Turner, he told me quite early on that he wanted to do the varnishing day, which is the big day at the Royal Academy. He knew that would take a bit of time. So I probably had, I don't know, maybe 3 months to work out how to create that. 3 months wasn't really enough either, but
better than 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. So that he knows when the cutoff is, sort of thing. He can guesstimate how we can achieve it. Yeah.
Well, is there a big difference though when you're working on something like Mr. Turner or Peterloo, where it's historical?
Yeah.
How much do you have to research and stick to the historical accuracy of the time and place?
And well, that's another beauty. And I've done quite a few period things now, and it's important to research the period that you're portraying. But again, I know there'll be some other designers and directors that will go one way, but with Mike as well, we're telling a cinematic story. It's not a documentary. We're storytelling. So the research we do at some point just becomes an inspiration for the visual design of it. It's not. I'm definitely not a stickler for being absolutely correct. It's more, to me, is the aesthetic working, and it's bringing the essence of the whole story rather than the specific molding from 1840. Well, if I don't think I make a call of where I'm going to spend my budget, or where I think the effort is required, or where I think the essence will come from. And sometimes that's not about the molding on the door. It's about maybe the color or the handle or something to give you an overall feel. So I can only do that if I've done my research and let it sort of inform me from the back of my mind, rather than being at the forefront and letting that sort of run the design. The story is absolutely always pivotal. And the other thing I'm keen to always do is tell the story from one person's point of view. I think often films can be committee directed, when you're getting notes from every sort of person. And I really try and, via osmosis, work out what is the director's vision, what's their ambition and desire for this film, and try and keep my mind out of that. I need to absolutely be a conduit of their mind. So, I quite enjoy the psychology of that, because some directors are very specific. Some, like Mike, have ideas and you bounce them around, and I know what to bring back to the table. So for instance, with Mike, he'll sort of say, Mr. Turner's needs to go to Margate. Do you think you can find me a house? And I'll go off and look for things and then come back and say, well, I haven't quite found a house, but I found this dockyard that I think we can do something with. And then he'll sort of respond to that. And other directors are really specific, like Edward Berger on Conclave, absolutely specific, knew very, very clearly what he wanted to achieve. So it was about me finding those specific visuals for him and then responding to that. And it's, like I say, great fun working with all the different directors. You must find it as well. Like, there's so many different ways to direct a movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's also interesting, too, that there are certain directors that sometimes have ideas in their head that they're finding trouble getting it out, to communicate. And then when you try and do a 2D drawing, they'll go, oh, yeah, but they don't see it until it's 3D. It's amazing. But do you then, if you feel that that's the person that you're working with, do you ever do models?
Absolutely.
Since you come from models.
Yeah. Well,
because sometimes that helps.
Yeah, I think it helps enormously for so many people. White card models, all that are great. And then modern technology, we use SketchUp, and I find SketchUp is great because we can even make little QuickTime movies and even plot cameras and lenses and work out, or we'll never see that flat, so that wall, so let's lose it. Or it'd be great if we had a camera trap here before we've even spent any money building it. Now we can render what the wallpaper might be that we've made, and put that on it and work out even colours. It's about using technology wisely as a tool. Definitely, there's opportunities there, yeah.
And do you try and talk with the DP ahead of time about, because I would think that their lighting would make a difference. I noticed in Saltburn, there was a lot of darkness on the edges of frame, which would mean you needed less detail there. Do you try, and can you get that kind of information?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they do it on the day, but...
Yeah. It's tricky because, DPs often come in later than me, so they've got a lot of catching up to do. I was liking it like I have a little sweet spot of maybe 2 months with the director when we're best buddies and thick as thieves, and all bets are off and we're completely building the world and it's all brilliant and fantastic. Then the DP rocks up, and I get dumped. And they have a new best friend. So I guess with Saltburn, we knew we were going for that Caravaggio feel. That was very early days. And Linus is quite remarkable, at conjuring those images up. So it just seemed to work beautifully. He slot in, he got it. He joined in pretty quick. Yeah.
And was that mansion a real mansion? Was it a location?
Yeah. Location.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was great because no one had ever filmed there before. And, that's like hen's teeth now, isn't it, in the UK? Everyone's been everywhere.
Really,
yeah.
So they're really willing for you to do everything because they don't know yet.
Yeah.
Everywhere's been filmed. I was in northern Kenya, Lake Turkana one time looking at a location, and our guide said, oh yeah, Vilmos Sigmund shot this shot a few weeks ago for a car commercial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, everywhere's done it.
Yeah. Yeah. Often I say to the location manager, don't, if it's been shot here before, please don't talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell the director. They're too proud to shoot on somebody else's location.
Yeah.
What I'm interested on, I want to go back to Peterloo a minute, because there's so much of it takes place in this one town where the massacre took place, which, and again, it's period. And how do you go about finding a location like that and then servicing it for the production? I mean, that's a huge challenge, right?
Yeah, that was a big one. So Peterloo, we knew we were going to look for St. Petersfield, and it was going to have to be on a location. You know, we didn't have a big budget. I think it was 17 million, I think. So Henry Woolley was the location manager, and we went all over the country. We went to military bases. We went everywhere trying to find a St. Peter's Square. And before that, Mike and I had walked around Manchester, walked the streets of Manchester there to stand in the square, which is not really there anymore. There are little pockets of it, but the train station's there. And so we knew we wanted a Georgian town that we could control. And it was just so hard. There was, you know, nearly everything has a Starbucks and a Smith's and a NatWest Bank and, you know, all modern accoutrements that it's always frustrating when you're on a tight budget to spend half your budget hiding the modernity. You know, you just want to story tell. You don't want to facilitate and hide stuff. So we kept going back to Tilbury Docks in East London. And it was going to be a big deal, but I started doing some scribbles of one street because it's got a bit of Georgian architecture there, but there was space for one street. And I did some scribbles of, I wonder what's the biggest street I could build. And then we only shoot in, you know, we sort of give ourselves 3 sides basically, and we never look at the 4th wall. So somehow we conjured up, I managed to work out I could probably do it in the time for the money, and I only built the first 2 floors, and we used set extension, which all against Mike's DNA to use any sort of VFX, but it's much less intrusive now. It's not all about having green screens everywhere. And if the main bit was going to be built, all the stuff within, you know, sort of, I think we built 25 foot high or something. We went for it, and it was extraordinary because then suddenly we had this whole area to ourselves, so Mike could rehearse. You know, it was private. It was we literally set a little village there. We had amazing Steve Dent became our stuntman, and he got on so well with Mike to recreate that battle sequence, the massacre sequence, which I think is so visceral and raw. Like not many other sequences like that are so intense. And I think it's because Mike and Steve worked so close together and were able to be in that environment for a couple of weeks. And we had a little village out the back with all the unit base and all the horses in their tents. And we just took over Tilbury. So it was, Manchester on Thames, basically.
Right, right.
And that was our world. Yeah, that was our world.
So that was like total control. You didn't have to buy off shopkeepers and all the rest of it.
And also it meant that Mike could have, you know, I think we were there for about, I think we built it in 2 months, and we probably filmed there. Well, Mike probably, I think, had it for 2 weeks, and then we filmed for maybe another 4. So it was really useful for him to have that privacy, that it was like a massive backlot for him. Yeah.
Is it difficult? I mean, on Hard Truth, for instance, is Mike shooting in sequence? Does it mean you have to have a location? For much, much longer than you would on a film like Conclave, for instance, because he's always shooting in continuity.
Yeah, and I guess with it sort of worked out fortuitously in that the main location, Pansy's house, we had for the whole run, and we did a number on it, and we just managed to find a brilliant location, and it was just at the moment when a guy was about to sell it, so we had that window where we could do, you know, take it over, and we weren't putting loads of people, you know, family out of their house for months and months, and therefore we were able to just drop in and out of that house to and fro and just pop out to the other one. So that did enable us to have, for Mike to have a certain amount of story order shooting. Wasn't all, but the majority was, which again is the way his process works best, because there are elements that have to remain fresh in the actors' performances. Yeah. Because they only find out about them, sort of thing, or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. So it shouldn't be out of order.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When do you decide, that to resort to building a set? I mean, were there any sets on Peterloo? I imagine there were some on Mr. Turner, right? Were there?
Yeah. It's a combination of time and money, and again, the director's desire. What is their ambition? Mike's is always to film on location. So then it becomes me about augmenting locations. So we built the Royal Academy up at Wentworth Woodhouse, which is now a well-used location. And again, we found a house that was just about to be sold. It was a big Georgian mansion in Woolwich that we managed to get just before it was sold and do a number on it. So it's those. I know for Mike, it's all about being on location, but for other directors, it's about, in the comfort of a soundstage, in the organisation, especially in wintertime, it seems to make sense that you're in a soundstage. We can, do normal hours in daylight and stuff like that. So it comes down to as well is what the production company, what their desires and ambitions are as well. They come with a budget, and sound stages are quite expensive. It's still cheaper probably to do most stuff on location, so that is a major factor. And I think a lot of the budgets I work in are right on that cusp, of making it more of a efficient use of the budget to be on location. Yeah.
Are there some scenes that you would prefer to be sets than locations, and why? What elements makes it better on a set?
I'm very lucky. I get to do a mix of it. I've done films that are all location. I've done films that are all studio, and the mixture is good. And it's nice to sort of chop and change. I don't think I have a inclination to do one or the other until I know what all the boundaries are. I think sometimes we're given like once I've read a script, then I have a blank piece of paper and I put a line on it where the budget is. I put a line on it where the location is, and I put a line on it where what the time is. And somewhere in that triangle is the film. And in a way, the boundaries help inform the design. So, sometimes I sort of need a boundary. Otherwise, I sort of lose my clarity of what we need to achieve in the time for the money. So I always find those three things are very important for me to find early on in order to make the decisions. Yeah.
Some scenes are more important to the story. I mean, they're critical, and other scenes are more explanatory. They need to be in there so you understand. You separate them out in the beginning because you're going to spend more time on the critical scenes.
Yeah, I guess I do. I sort of try and work out where the weight of the film is. It's like maybe we're in a kitchen for 10 scenes and a drawing room for 1, but maybe the drawing room scene is the pivotal piece. So it's about making that decision, being quite mindful on how you achieve that with the budget. Yeah.
And do you normally work with the same crew?
When I first started off, I would be, like working in Norfolk, it was local crew. Then I worked in Scotland, local crew. And I love that because like everyone brings a slightly different dynamic to the team, like working in Las Vegas, as they say, was amazing. And there was a energy. And then I worked in Belfast for a bit. And then, I've had the brilliant opportunity to work abroad. However, I do have my favourites now. I do have a really strong, I somehow got a really lovely team together. And I've worked with a brilliant set decorator called Charlotte Durix, who I just hate it when she goes off to work with anyone else. It's like, I get very jealous. But it's lovely. It's nice having a regular team, definitely. And then, trying to bring new people in and on is also, it's I guess we're at that stage now, slightly bigger teams. So, yeah.
Talk about CONCLAVE. I mean, how that came about, and how did you work with Ed? How did that pre-production process go? And
was it set or locations?
Yeah, choice of location or set, and where the hell you shot it. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'd met Ed during lockdown. I we'd started a project together, but I'd never actually met him, and we were recceing together on Google Maps, waiting for lockdown to unlock, sort of thing. And it was a project that never really got off the ground. So then sort of, the months went by, and then when was it? I was in the middle of Saltburn. We were filming Saltburn, and he reached out, as they say, and I was, he said, "What you do at the end of the year, sort of thing. Do you want to read this script and come to Rome for 6 months?" It's so difficult to turn those sort of jobs down, isn't it? It's like such a hard life. So we started to do some early scouts to Rome on the weekends whilst I was filming Saltburn. So I'd hop on a plane to Rome and just have the most magical weekends going around the most gorgeous locations in Rome, starting to build the world of CONCLAVE. And we had a lovely location manager who showed us, there's a wealth of places to film in Rome. We were filming Rome for Rome, so that was a benefit. And also, we had a soundstage at Cinecittà, and you just drive through the gates at Cinecittà, and you can feel Fellini getting in your veins and get all inspired by that whole process. So yeah, we couldn't have done it any other way. It was always going to be filmed in Rome. Cinecittà had some flattage from a previous build of the Sistine Chapel, so we pulled that out of storage and built that in the corner of one of the big stages there. I slightly changed the configuration because Edward wanted a more combative, like a bit like Parliament, 2 sides, although the story unfolds and it's not really 2 sides, it's many. But it's interesting. The visuals look more powerful when there's 2 sides, 2 rows of men. And then we spent ages, just a jigsaw of probably about 15, 20 other locations to do some of the exteriors of Rome, the staircases. There's a million staircases in this movie and lifts and what have you. Seems to all happen on those, but that's the beauty. No one really questions it, but yeah. And then we built the Casa Santa Marta, so the dormitory room, the guest house where the cardinals live. For ages, the production wanted us to use a location for money. It's cheaper. It would be quicker, easier. But Edward and I just could not find the right space for this hermetically sealed bunker-like place. And I don't know if you've been to Rome, but they've got their business district, the EUR district, which is this brilliant area of Rome that has brutal fascist post-war architecture. So really amazing, really a real juxtaposition to the ornate beauty of the churches and cloisters. And Edward and I were keen to use that as some part of our movie. He was really inspired by the Piccola films from the thrillers from the 70s. So, which is an interesting, again, juxtaposition to have cardinals in a thriller, a 70s thriller vibe, And that just meant that the more brutal fascist architecture with those lower ceilings, and suddenly the sort of widescreen nature of the movie suddenly started to play a little bit more. And again, working with Stéphane Fontaine to create that sort of, prison-like vibe, as opposed to the gorgeous openness of the Sistine. But I think for a DOP, it's perhaps one of the hardest jobs because they're in lockdown. The shutters are down. There's no natural light. He had to use all our practical lights as his sources as well. But I think his use of lighting and the grade that I think is the end product, the grade is absolutely phenomenal. I just thought, I was absolutely blown away when I saw what he'd done to all our colours, and the lights and the shadows just looked awesome. But again, that all comes as well from Edward having such a visual eye. He was really keen. It's very graphic images that he comes up with. So when we're location finding, those are the things that he resonated with. And I guess, like I said earlier, I try and work out what are the things that get a little twinkle from a director, and I try and sort of fill the gaps in and join in with, okay, so he likes the shiny marble surfaces up against the crumbling walls, ochre walls, okay, and you sort of you have your own little dialogue going in of how you can achieve what you think the director wants. And That's often done in the back of a recce van, in those early scouting, when you just end up talking about the weather or the colour of someone's coat, and then that sort of all blends in, because at that stage everything's so fresh and new about the story and what you want to achieve. And again, at that point, you don't necessarily, if producers are listening, but you don't have to really worry about the budget right then. It's more about thinking big and then thinking how you're going to do it in the time for the money. You don't want to be restricted. It's the same when I speak to writers, because I can remember speaking to one writer and he's going, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have written that because it's difficult to do." And it's like, no, never think that. It's the fun bit for us is to work out how we do that. Yeah.
How you get the basic reason that it's there, and convey it, even though it's not quite literal.
There's a real formality, and it's like you say, there's strength to the images in terms of the compositions, the formality of a lot of it. Was it storyboarded, and were you involved in that process? And how closely did you stick to it? Could you design, or could you find a location that was like one angle because you knew that's all all that would be needed there?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a great concept artist who was really quick at coming up with some of the designs, and that I guess we knew what the Sistine Chapel looked like and how that was going to be. So and we knew very early on the locations we chose, and during the building, then when we got to build the Casa Santa Marta, which was quite late in the process, I guess we left it to the sort of 11th hour to get the go ahead. Then Edward sat down with Stefan for probably about a month during prep, and they shortlisted everything. It was the most meticulous directing. Like his work ethic is huge, and he'd shortlisted everything, storyboarded all the difficult sequences like the explosions and any other beats that he wanted. But they were purely as a guide. So, sometimes when you shortlist everything or storyboard everything, you lose the sort of fluidity and the spontaneity of things. It feels too formulaic. And I think that was the beauty. Edward had prepped so well that therefore he could be more fluid on the day. But in actual fact, the composition and the framing, I think, is also down to Stefan. And they had a really great symbiotic relationship in sort of like placing how things were going to be told. And, again, the great thing about Edward, everyone on that set had access to the storyboard and the shot list. It wasn't a secret bit of document. It was it was a tool that everyone could be part of, which is, I think, really important that crews feel part of the process, because we're all creating it together. So we definitely all felt part of a team with that. Yeah.
What was the biggest problem on the film?
I can't say.
No, there's always one, Dawn.
Yeah. The biggest, to be quite honest, it was probably my Italian wasn't very good, and I've ended up with really good Italian sign language. But I wish I was better at languages. I told you I was crap at school, so that would have been much more useful. I mean, luckily I work in a visual department, so scribbles were very useful. But for ages, when I first got there, my team would be going, is better. When I was explaining something, I mean, their English was really good, but I'd be going, and I think we can do this and that and whatever, and what about if we did that? And they'd be going, is better. And I thought, it's better. So they were understanding what I was saying, it's better. But is better means wait. I don't understand you. It means wait. So a good month. I was going, brilliant, we're getting on really well. They think what I'm doing is better. Yeah.
Who told you eventually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always those things.
I think,
even between countries that are supposedly have the same language.
Yeah.
Who told you?
I can't remember how I worked it out. I think I'd started thinking, I was trying to learn Italian whilst I was there. And I just had this app where you could speak into it. and it came back as weight. So yeah, oops. Idiot.
Talking about apps and technology, I mean, on Conclave, was there any digital work on the, did you do any CG additions?
Yeah, so the Sistine Chapel, we built 10 meters high and the rest is CG.
Right.
And when we did the explosion, although we had physical effects, we had a special effects rig in the right place, the window wasn't there and all of that. So that's all added on afterwards. And some of the backgrounds in some of the locations that we chose, the Vatican and St. Peter's have been dropped in. But I think it's all quite subtle. And again, I think when it's, it can be, it's so, I think that's when VFX is a beautiful combination when you don't notice it, it's, and you're not supposed to, and it just blends in. So it was a sort of quiet VFX, I'd say, in that film. Yeah.
Have you got any desire to do a big science fiction film?
I would love to. But I would love, I'd love to do a sci-fi. Oh my God. Sci-fi and a Western are still on my list to tick off. Yeah. I prepped a sci-fi that never got going, and it was just the best. So I've still got my spaceship in the back pocket waiting for that to happen. Yeah.
It's always good.
Yeah.
Do you like it because you're really creating a world?
Completely.
That anything's possible?
And also you're creating from the ground up, like, how do you eat? How do you drink? We think it would be out of a nice glass from Habitat. No, maybe you squirt it in your mouth, on that. Actually, during that process of prep on the sci-fi movie, I spoke to a futurologist who knew there'd be a futurologist, and it was really...
I didn't.
Yeah. There are these, people who absolutely plan how, have knowledge of what might happen in the future. Things like the spaceship will be built by a computer, 3D printed out in space. So we won't, as people, we won't be on it until it's built and functioning, and then we'll go up there. So you'll build it from from Earth.
Wow.
And then you'll travel to it and things like that, which of course you would. Of course you would. Yeah.
Well, I think in that future we'll be 3D printed as well, won't we?
Exactly. Yeah.
Androids or something. Yeah, sure. We're going to go to Mars. Anyway, don't get me started on that. It's not going to happen in my lifetime anyway. So I want to ask you, so do you ever think about that sheep farm in New South Wales?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I noticed on your CV, you were recently on a film called 3 Bags Full, a sheep detective movie.
Yeah, bring it. Come on. You'll all be watching
So
this.
is that it? You're trying to go back to sheep farming?
Yeah. It was so funny because it's absolute full circle because, it's about sheep farming in Oxfordshire.
Wow. And
we needed a field full of grass. So I grew 10 acres of grass for that film. It was hilarious because we had a window of opportunity. So we planted it in like March and we were going to shoot in June, I think. We're shooting in June. And the whole of March, I don't know if you remember, was quite a bad year for growing things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, because it was quite a big budget and it's all reliant on this 10 acres of grass. Yeah. And it was quite stressful. Is it going to grow? So we put special fertilizer down and, pray to the rain gods. And then the rain gods came and then the sun gods came. And then I spent the whole shoot mowing it because it grew too fast. And it was like a jungle. Yeah.
I can see you personally out there with a hand mower. Yeah. I'm sure that wasn't it, but that's the image I got. Well, it's a bit like Wallace and Gromit, really, isn't it?
Exactly. It was quite fun dressing the sheep shed because we've got a scene where the sheep get shorn, and I was like, it's like all came back to me how this all works. So it was fun. Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Occasionally it's come in useful, like, what crop is that in the field or what tractor do we need? Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me it's been like one of the things I love about working on different movies is I get to learn different things. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much you knew about Turner, the painter Turner, before you the film, or the Peterloo Massacre, Or had you ever been to Chesil Beach before you did on Chesil Beach, which I love that story. It's a wonderful piece.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's great. Like we become masters of a particular genre or industry or whatever, depending, like I did a thing called William and Mary. So I learned, all about midwifery and being a funeral director. And then the next film, it's, like you say, Turner. I didn't know, I knew a bit about Turner, but not masses. And that was great to jump into all of that. Yeah, we're lucky to tell the broad spectrum of stories, basically. Yeah. And I really enjoy, because I don't think I'd give myself enough interest to do it on my own, like I probably would never have learnt about the Peterloo Massacre. Wouldn't have been on my radar. So yeah. And it was, and when if you're making something, yeah. It's like, right. I love reading the books often the films that I've worked on. I would probably, some of the books like Conclave, I hadn't read Conclave before I made the movie, and it's, I'm a massive fan of that writer now. So Robert Harris, so reading all his books. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also worked on a film about Greville Wynne.
Oh, yeah.
During the missile crisis,
Yeah.
right? That must have been interesting, because that's a fantastic, interesting time.
Absolutely. And that's with an amazing director called Dominic Cook, who I've worked with a couple of times. We did Chesil Beach. But, curiously, the Courier, we did quite a lot of wrecking in Minsk and Kiev, and now we look at those countries now, and I sort of can't believe, the what's going on there. But when was this 6 years ago, we very nearly ended up, filming in Minsk. And did so many recce's over there, because it's amazing architecture. It's just wonderful, but there was just something slightly uneasy about the whole situation. So we ended up in our favourite Prague in the end, which is also
just because it felt uncomfortable being
there. Not just uncomfortable. I just think we were worried that just facilitating the filming, we couldn't sort of guarantee that we'd get into that location, sort of thing. Although people were going, yes, you can. It just, And when you're,
cities like Prague or Budapest, they're used to film crews coming in and taking over their town. City.
And they're great. I love Prague. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I've not shot there, but we shot in Budapest, and it was so great. We took over part of the town streets at night, and then filled it with smoke on a very windy day.
Excellent.
I think the whole of Budapest was full of.
But I also think that it was early enough in Budapest's history that they hadn't had that many films.
Yeah, that's true. They still thought
so
it was
they were
exotic.
going, this is great.
Yeah.
A film is here.
Yeah.
Little did they know.
So it was very different than shooting in
outside.
London or New York.
Yeah, sure. Excellent.
That sheep farm sounds very attractive to me.
I know. I'm trying to work out how I can do the two, but it just doesn't. It's not there. I'm not there yet.
Sheep farm in northern Scotland. It's not that much different than New South Wales.
Yeah, true. A bit colder though, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, rough weather.
Oh, funny. Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this.
Thank you.
This has been really great.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to talk to you guys too. Yeah, hope I made sense. Yeah.
You made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, the best of luck.
Thank you.
All.
Well, we got the.
And I want to see that sheep movie now. I really do.
I think that won't be out for ages. It's got, it's a live action animation as well. So we did. So I think they're drawing the sheep as we speak. Yeah.
All right, Susie.
Lovely.
All right. Well, thank you, Susie. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to sponsor the Team Deakins podcast, let us know at pod@teamdeakins.com. Thanks for listening. If you want more information and further discussion, check out the forums at www.rogerdeakins.com. Becoming a member is free, and you can ask follow-up questions there. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more new questions and topics. Also, check us out on Instagram at team.deakins. See you next time.